So now that you've got the basics of expanding and what a perfect square actually is, we want to be able to make a perfect square. So here I've got a expression. This isn't a perfect square. 10 isn't a perfect square. If we square root it, that times the first thing isn't going to equal the last. So what we want to do is we want to make these first two terms into a perfect square. Alright, and so from our rule, a plus b squared equals a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Okay, so from our rule, we know if we want to figure out that b value, b is the whole term 2ab divided by 2 lots of a, because that'll get rid of it. Technically we can just divide by 2 with all of these x ones because we don't need to think of the x. So what we're going to do is we're going to add b on 2 to get rid of, to figure out what b is. And we're going to square it. We're going to take away the same thing. B on 2 squared, then add our 10. Okay, next step. We want, the reason we added and took away is because 4 on 2 squared minus 4 on 2 squared, that's 0. So technically I've done nothing to this equation. I've added nothing in, which is the point. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this into my perfect square. So I'm going to leave him as a squared thing because that makes him easier to factorize, because I just know it's the first thing and the last thing with that sign squared. But the last guy, I'm going to actually expand him out fully. So 4 on 2 is 2, 2 squared is 4, then add 10. And so now I just simplify that last bit there. So negative 4 plus 10 is plus 6. And that's my square completed. Alright, you want to do it when you haven't got a coefficient for for x squared. So you want a to equal 1. If a doesn't equal 1, take out a common factor. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to take 2 out as a common factor, which leaves me with this guy. And then I just do my process again. So I add in and I take away b on 2 squared. Okay, so now I'm going to simplify my positive term, so it's still a square number. My negative term I'm going to fully expand out. Cool. And now I can factorize. So x minus 3 all squared minus 5. The last thing I want to do is get rid of that square bracket. So what we're going to do is multiply my first term by 2 and my second term by 2, and that's pointing to the negative 5. And that is my completed square. Okay, the last thought you might get is when you've got these odd b values. It's the same deal, it's just we're going to deal with fractions now. So x squared plus 5x, so then we add b on 2 squared, take b on 2 squared. Okay, so now we can't simplify 5 on 2 any more than that without doing a decimal. So we're just going to leave it as it is. So that's going to become x plus 5 on 2 squared. And that's your factorized. Then, when you're squaring a fraction, you square both the top and the bottom. So that's 25 on 4 minus, I want to turn 4 into something on 4. To do that, I times both the top and the bottom by 4, which gets me 16 on 4. Okay, and then I can simplify. So here becomes x plus 5 on 2 all squared minus 41 on 4. So same deal, we just have fractions in there, which can become complicated. The last thing we want to do is actually be able to solve when we've got a completing the square question. So first we complete the square, then we solve. I'm only going to do one example. So completing the square, x 10x plus b on 2 squared minus b on 2 squared. Okay, and don't get rid of the equal zeros because he is still an equation. We need to include that. So then x squared plus 10x plus 5 squared minus 25 minus 3 equals 0. This guy becomes our factorized. Minus 28 equals 0. Okay, so we can complete the square. The next thing we do is literally just rearrange our equation. So we're going to add 28 to both sides. So now I have x plus 5 squared equals 28. The next thing we're going to do is square root both sides. X plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 28. Now it's plus or minus because if we think negative 2 squared equals 4, 2 squared equals 4. So both of these get us the same answer. So we don't know if we square root 4 whether it's going to be positive 2 or negative 2. So that's why we take the positive and negative when we square root. And then we minus 5. So x equals plus or minus root 28 minus 5. Then we should technically write it out as x equals root 28 minus 5 or negative root 28 minus 5. And that's your answer. Okay, 3E question, page 105, question 3.